Max Pitsley.
I'm Camille Cannengeiser.
I'm Luke Patterson.
I'm Xander Morgan.
And this is Wufu Earth. Wufu Earth is a totally immersive, sandboxed world-building game designed specifically for a trifecta of brand new virtual reality technology. We want to bring the innovations of this technology into the world-building genre to create something that's new and elegant. In trying to find the crossover between immersiveness and world building, we've come to these 4 core values. Players will feel empowered through creative authorship and in realizing that they have an influence on the world around them. This leads itself to emergence, which will ensure through making sure that there are enough tools to ensure variety. Our design will be experiential. Every little bit of player input will have a rich and delightful output from the game. And we won't break immersion in that we reduce any abstraction in the interface and the art is cohesive. You'll see these applied throughout our pitch. The technology that we're using provides the context for all of the design decisions we made, so we'll go over that quickly first. The Oculus is the player's vision that puts their space in this world. We also have the Omni, which allows players to walk freely in any direction. This removes any disconnect that the brain would have between what the legs are doing and what the eyes are seeing. Lastly, we have the Prio VR, which is a motion capture grade hand position and orientation tracker, which will be what the player uses to manipulate their environment. And what you see in here is full body tracking, but there's an upper body only version that we'll be using. I'll briefly turn the floor over to our engineering lead, Luke.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we're going to encounter using these different technologies. Obviously, there are a lot of challenges in incorporating 3 different new technologies. A lot of these haven't been released. Well, the Prio VR will be coming out later this year, as well as we'll be getting an Omni. And together, these 3 technologies will allow total immersion for players. But the engineering challenge here is that we have to combine them all into one cohesive experience. And I think this is totally possible because each of these technologies is made to seamlessly integrate with the others. Prio VR is made to be upper body tracking using your arms as well as root motion, while the Oculus tracks your head motion and the Omni tracks your feet. So in this way, there are no conflicting bone structures between these 3 different technologies. With that in mind, there are also some software challenges.
Sorry, guys.
Sorry about that. We have here a prototype demonstrating some of our software challenges. We want to use voxel terrain. This means that we can have volumetric, updated in real-time landscapes that the player can interact with and change in real time. We also want to incorporate these different elements of water as well as life. So the player will be able to grow plants as well as use water to interact with their environment.
And I forgot, this is a prototype that Luke put together. So, as a building game, the most important thing, the basis for everything else, is what the player builds things out of. The earth is the core brick that no other element can exist without earth underneath it. We have different types of earth: rock, dirt, and floating rocks, which we think will enable players to make a much more fantastical set of worlds. There's water, which we're planning on having emission-based, so you can create a spring. Here's an example of a spring filling up a basin that was created, but there's no risk of accidentally flooding your entire world because water will dissipate if it reaches a point that's 1 block under the spring. And where the most variety in our world comes from is the plant life. Now, players won't choose exactly what type of plant they're going to place, whether it's a pine tree or a shrub. that depends on the type of terrain that's underneath where they're placing their plants, and whether it's on the top or the sides. This is a hierarchy system that we see working to decide what type of plant the player is creating. And in center all of this is the player, who is a nature god on a very tiny planet. We figure since the Omni allows unrestricted movement, why restrict the player by putting them on an island or in a room with walls? And because the Prio has hand controllers that the player will be holding onto to enhance immersion, we make that diegetic by including a magical staff in either hand. The tools that current world builders are equipped with, I think, are sort of comparable to a screwdriver. It's a little bit tedious, it's pixel by pixel, and we want to give something that's more fun to use. And in a nutshell, I think this demonstrates what we're aiming to do to differentiate ourselves from current terraforming games. This is an example of a few minutes in our game, where first off, we'll extrude the earth by, with our earth staff, painting over area that we want to affect, then pressing a trigger and moving our hand up to extrude it. Because the hand motion solution we're using can detect orientation of the palm, that can act as a filter for which direction you're affecting your terrain. Reduction or destruction works in precisely the same way. And here we've got the player moving on to the top of this cliff. They can aim the cursor at their feet and stomp, which is detected by the Omni, and creates a spring, which water then flows out of. The left hand, the nature staff, works very much in the same way as the earth staff. They're creating some plants here. And it can also work as a paintbrush if you put it directly against the side of a surface to create vines and the like. This is our art lead, Camille K.
Hi. So the Tower P are small, mischievous little fire sprites that inhabit the planet that the player creates, enhancing the vivacity of the player's experience. They react to the elements that the player places within their environment. Their design is based roughly off of ancient petroglyphs, and they're kind of like aquarium fish. They're fun to look at, they're interesting to watch, and they respond to their environment. So this leads into art style. We're definitely inspired by the natural painted landscapes of Avatar: The Last Airbender and the artistic inked style of Okami, minus the dark, heavy inked lines. The player is akin to an artist, the planet is their canvas, and the elements are their paints, and we would like to emulate that in the style that they experience.
This is a rough development plan with our producer we'll quickly go over.
Hello. So real quick, over the summer we plan to make sure that our core software technologies are in place, the Voxel building, as well as prototyping some of the hardware elements that we plan on having through using the Kinect and as well as a DK1 Oculus. Going into midterms, we plan to have a short playable prototype, as well as be on our way to having all of our hardware systems implemented. We're hoping to have two out of the three final systems put in place. Come demo day for the fall, we hope to have a short 5 to 10 minute experience where that kind of outlines all the different things, all the different core things you can do in our game, as well as having all three of those core hardware systems in place. And then the second semester we plan on using to really establish a better sense of world and better sense of place by having things like the Taupoi, the weather systems and flowing water, and that kind of bring the player into the world and kind of immerse them even more.
We're a little short on time, so I'm just going to briefly go over challenges and scope. There's a lot of unknowns because we're using this new technology, and so we have a very flexible scope with elements that we are okay with getting out because they're not essential to our experience. And Luke will be able to talk a lot in the questions about our approaches to these problems, and of course that the assets, the number that we need, are easily scalable. The worlds, these are things that people create and they're going to want to share them, but we're not using accounts or anything like that. We see it as simply a Dropbox that each world is in. Players can visit other worlds through an open environment, And we look at this because we want this to be an installation piece. We can see this going to conventions. In fact, like Akira's arcade machine on the second floor, there's place in SCA and SCI where this might find a home, because being an installation piece, players can swap off and really make their emergent experience collaborative. Thank you for listening. This was Wufu Earth, and I'd like to open the floor to questions.
I'm going to take the first one. I see you have an advisory